Welcome back to the EO Wonder podcast, where we explore the stories of inspiring entrepreneurs and get a closer look at what's helping them build their success. I'm your host, Kalika Yap, and today we're joined by the incredible, amazing Josh Holtzman, a successful entrepreneur and business coach from Los Angeles. He's also an EOLA member or former for many, many years. Josh has quite a background. He founded and grew a top professional services firm, eventually selling it to a national company, and from there he joined forces to expand the business even further and sold it again to a global, publicly traded IT services company. But the real shift came when Josh adopted EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and now he's focused on helping other entrepreneurial leaders strengthen their businesses using EOS. So whether you're a founder, a CEO, or just passionate about growing a business, you'll find a lot to learn here. I bumped into Josh recently at Airwan when I was just randomly there at the Pacific Palisades, and so glad to have reconnected him after so many years. Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast, Josh.
Thanks, Kalika. That was quite an introduction, but wonderful to be here today. EO has such a special place in my heart. It's really a privilege to be spending some time here with you this morning.
I also was really impressed because I saw that you were on the cover of the LA Business Journal. Talk to us a little bit about why you're on the cover of the LA Business Journal recently.
Yeah, thanks, Kalika. I appreciate it. Looking back, I have the privilege of working with about 30 entrepreneurial leadership teams here in the LA area. And I've been doing this now for about 7.5 years. And so if you think about that, I've delivered something over 750 full day sessions coaching these clients. The impact that we're starting to make is pretty meaningful, both in terms of the positive impact on these businesses, for the entrepreneurs, for their leadership teams, for their employees, for their community, and for their families. When businesses are being run well, not only are they profitable and thriving, but generally what we do helps them become more balanced as people. They're not killing themselves because the business is running really well. So it all has a really positive impact again. I, being a fifth generation Angelino, also tend to focus my practice here in the general Los Angeles area because that's my passion. It is my roots. Therefore, the impact has just continued to grow. And so the LA Business Journal kind of got wind of that and said, even in times of struggle over the last couple of years through the pandemic, et cetera, the companies that Josh Holtzman's been working with using EOS continue to thrive. What is going on here? And I think that was really the gist of the article there. And so I had an opportunity to tell my story, which was just such an honor being a, 20-somewhat year reader of the LA Business Journal. And we were featured in there, one of my businesses, as a best place to work, and this is many years ago, but to be featured individually on the front page was really just an honor and a delight.
And I mean, your photo was on the cover. It was such a joy when my husband, handed me the paper in the morning. I was just like so thrilled because we've known each other for many, many years. When you had your company, American Data, and also when you sold your other company. And it's just been so wonderful to be part of your journey. But what I really wanted to focus on today was how you grew those businesses that were, you were talking about in the LA Business Journal, on average 44%.
Sure.
Tell us the secret.
Sure, yeah. So before we dive into that, I got to go back to the first part about us knowing each other for so long, because I was reflecting on this, and I think it would be doing the listeners a disservice without sharing this. Number one is, Kalika, I remember first meeting you when I applied for EO. You go and you present in front of the board, and Kalika, you were one of the people in that room. I think it was at the Lux Hotel on Sunset. And I remember being a little bit nervous, but nonetheless, obviously, I ended up joining the chapter here in LA. But just again, so the audience knows, prior to that, I was in the first class of Accelerator. So I was an accelerator for a couple of years, graduated into EO. And the last thing I'll just share, and I was hoping to get it on my phone, but it's going to be too unpractical right now. There is a photo of you, Kalika, with my daughter, who's now 14 years old. She must have been 1.5 years. It was at the LA EO Christmas party, holiday party here at the Annenberg. And we had like a kids club up top so the parents could bring their kids. And she was just crying, missing her parents. And there's a picture of you on the stairway holding my daughter, Lila, who's again, like 1.5 years old, the tears coming down her eyes. you were kind enough to grab her and bring her down to us. So that always held a place in my heart. And that picture was just kind of a fun one.
Mm,
So
I
research EPO.
I have those photos because I was learning chair during that time. And when I just remember when I was learning chair, it was just so important for me to bring the entrepreneurs and their families together, especially during the holiday party. And I always tried to do that. And I'm so glad that, you were able to experience that.
Awesome. So
Yay.
anyhow, on to your question, 44% growth on average. So that was really interesting. As they were interviewing me for the article, they had asked the question, so what's the average growth percentage of the companies that you work with? And that's a really, quite frankly, a hard question to answer. Not so much by the numbers, but the point being is the work we do as EOS implementers is really simply helping people get what they want from their businesses. That's the simplest way I can describe it. And everybody wants something different. Some of my clients are really high growth. They want to be the number one in their industry or position themselves where there's at such a large scale they can sell for a boatload of money. For some of them, it's not about top line growth, it's about profitability. They're happy with the size of their business. They have no interest in growing the top line. They're just more people, more headaches, right? But they think they can make more bottom line, right? More profit. And for some of them, it's not about monetary or fiscal growth at all. It's actually about growing the stability of the business, making it more mature so they can detach from the business and go live on an island for a year and have confidence the business is running well without them. So I just want to be really clear, that's not, while the growth numbers are impressive, perhaps, that's not what everybody wants. And so I was going through the numbers and really, I did a really simple calculation. I looked at, 25 companies that I've worked with consistently over the last X number of years. And, I think the largest one had like 4,500% growth. I don't remember what the number was, but they've gone from 7 million, and I'm sorry, 1 million when they were at EO Accelerator. I started working with them. This year, they'll do over 120 million 6 years later. So that, if we kept that in the calculation, that would blow off the chart. It would show that everybody on average was 150%, per year average increase. So I removed that from the list because that was silly. And then I've got, again, some other clients who it's not about growth, but I wanted to include those as well. And they're growing at 6-7% a year. But yes, the average was 44% is where we came to. And really at the end of the day, it's about running a great business. It's really about digging into the fundamentals of running a great business, no magic pills, and doing things like making sure the leadership team, first and foremost, is aligned, that they have crystal clarity around where they're going and how they're going to get there. Because it's really unfortunate in this world, while there's no shortage of vision, it's not that everybody, sometimes people don't always share the vision on the leadership team. So they're not working with each other and moving in the same direction. They're kind of working like that. And that's frustrating. That's one piece. The other is just getting really clear on who's accountable for what and where does my lane end and begin and yours. So we all understand our responsibilities and where accountability sits. And those two things together, I think, are just the basics. And of course, I'm sure many of your listeners have read Traction and are familiar with EOS, right? There's 6 key components we really focus on strengthening within a business. Obviously, you've had the privilege of interviewing twice now, and he's talked about some of these principles as well. I had the privilege of being in the first 100 EOS implementers. There's, I think, like 850 now. So when I went through training and boot camp, Gina was still involved in teaching some of it. So I got a chance to really build a relationship with him early on. And we've established a nice relationship over the years where he's been able to serve as a mentor to me over the years when I have a challenge or a problem or whatever it might be.
And EOS helped you. Tell us about how your businesses were elevated because of EOS.
Yeah, I'll share a few things here. First, open and honest, vulnerable, because we don't grow if we're not vulnerable. I founded my first business. We were a professional services business in the Salesforce.com space when I was 26 years old. And a couple of years later, I joined Accelerator. We were probably $500,000 in revenue at that point in time, maybe 5 employees, I don't recall. Grew that to qualify for EO, and a couple of years in, we had hit the $4 million mark. And I recognized that our market had become highly acquisitive, meaning companies were being bought and sold for really high multiples in our space. And while I didn't set out to build a company to grow it and sell it, I wanted to grow it, didn't want to sell it, just for sake of clarity. I recognized a transaction could be actually really amazing for me, my employees, and my family. I decided to scale the business from 4 million to 15 million while the market was still hot over a 3-year period. Got everybody aligned. I thought I had a really clear vision and accountability to make that happen. And 18 months later, we were still at 4 million in revenue. We had hit a ceiling. And I was becoming exhausted as the entrepreneur. I was becoming, quite frankly, discouraged. I had reached my financial risk tolerance. In fact, I remember presenting my whole plan to my forum, doing a presentation and getting feedback on the strategy and the way I was going to go about it, et cetera. But I just got to the point where I was tired. I don't want to do it anymore, but I knew I was sitting on something of value. So rather than go at it alone, I figured maybe if I join forces with another firm, we can have a faster, more certain path to an exit. I went through a process. I didn't hire an investment banker. We were just too small to do that. The cost just wouldn't be worth it in my experience. So I had a good network of other CEOs and competitors in our space that were friendly competitors because we were in different geographies, et cetera. And I reached out to all the people I knew and said, hey, I'm interested in potentially selling, merging, et cetera. And it was actually a member of EO in the St. Paul, Minneapolis area who we connected really, really well, and they ended up acquiring my business. They were larger than us. They were about twice our size. We were about 20 employees. They were probably about 80, so I guess more than twice our size. Together, we were about 100 employees. So about 13 million combined when we brought the two companies together. They happened to be using EOS. In fact, Mike Payton was one of the first EOS implementers working directly under Gino in the Minnesota area, and he was our implementer. And so I had the opportunity to be part of a company for a 3-year period running the business on EOS. We then scaled that together using EOS in our combined energy and a few other roll-ups from about 13 million combined to 40 million over a 3-year period, and then successfully sold that, as you mentioned earlier, to a publicly traded global IT services firm in an all-cash deal. So that was when I first learned about EOS. Our little 20-person company that I started, we had grown it together to about 200 people. And now we're part of a 20,000 person global enterprise, publicly traded. And there was a moment, I've got to admit, where I thought, maybe I'll become the CEO of this 20,000 person company. I'll work my way up the ranks. And I realized about 6 months in, I don't have the stomach for corporate life. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And so that's when I started to think about my transition into what's next professionally for me. And I started to reflect back and ask myself, why was it that I got stuck? Yet together we were able to break through ceiling after ceiling after ceiling. And the one thing I could continue to point to was EOS. That was what I didn't have in my business. If I did, maybe I wouldn't have sold. Maybe I would have grown and achieved that 15 million mark and sold, beforehand. Can't rewrite history, who knows? But as I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, I could think of nothing more fulfilling than to give back and work with other leadership teams to help them get what they want from their business using the best way I know how to run a business, which is EOS. So that's really how I was introduced to EOS. And that's how it transformed my life and my business. About 6 months into becoming an EOS implementer, again, we were a small community of maybe less than 100 people when I first started. People learned about my background in the professional services space. I had happened to build a CRM system for my EOS practice because that's just how I like process. I like having a system to how I do what I do and keep things organized. And so other EOS implementers from around the country said, Josh, can you help me with my CRM? And my answer was no, not because I was trying to be a competitive jerk. We're very abundance minded, but I left that industry. That could have been a massive distraction to throw me off my rocker from just making an impact working with leadership teams. And after repeated requests, I founded a new company outside of this where I was the visionary, brought in an integrator who I'd known for years, and we built a company called Session Guru, which was a practice management solution for EOS implementers. And from day one, we use the EOS tools. We created a VTO. What do we want to be when we grow up? What are the values we want to instill to surround ourselves by the right people, et cetera? So I won't go through any more detail, but this was an opportunity to use these tools I knew so well, literally from the time I founded the business with 2 employees. It was me and my partner. And so anyhow, we scaled that over the period of about a year and a half. It was during the pandemic. We ultimately created enough of a value proposition in what we were offering to EOS implementers to give them tools to run their business, where we had about 25% of the community at this point in time paying us about $500 a month to provide a SaaS solution for them to run their platform, to their back end of their business. And then about 6 months later, EOS Worldwide came and said, hey, we'd really like this tool. Can we work out a deal? So we ended up selling the tool to EOS Worldwide, and we've been business partners around that ever since. So EOS has definitely had a huge impact on my businesses.
There was this one story that you told me about how you used EOS to figure out whether or not your business partner was, or I think with your best friend, was the right fit. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that. Little 5% here.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was back in the first company I had mentioned. We had been acquired at this point in time. And it wasn't actually my business partner, but it was one of my best friends. I had hired him and brought him on to be our head of sales prior to the acquisition. And I was always the type of person I don't want to do business with family. I don't want to do business with good friends. But I knew with him, we had a long history. We could keep our business relationship and our personal relationship compartmentalized. And he was the right guy for the job. I trusted him and he had the right experience. So we grew the business with him at the helm of sales. We sold the business, and the acquiring company, who was larger, had a more experienced sales leader that was already leading, they had trusted. And so there was an opportunity for him to either leave or he could stay in more of a senior producer role, leader role. Wasn't managing a team, but working on the strategic big deals. And he said, you know what, I'd love to stay around. And I was thrilled. So things were great until they weren't. The performance started to go down over time. And ultimately, using the framework and the language that we instill within EOS around right people in the right seat, we sat down and had a conversation. I remember over lunch, and I said, all right, let's do a quick core values review here, and let's do a quick GWC review here, which is gets it, wants it, has the capacity to do the job. We went through the core values. There were no concerns there. He was a core values fit, but we reviewed his responsibilities and looked at his performance. And I said, do you get it? And he said, yeah, I'm wired to do this. And I said, I agree, you're wired to do this. I said, but you don't currently have the capacity to do it because the results aren't there. Capacity is the skills, the know-how, hitting the numbers, et cetera, right? These are acquired skills. I'm like, I know you've got that inside of you, but we're not seeing the results. And I said, do you want it? And he kind of looked down and looked back up and said, no. You know, he was brought into the team for a different, bigger role, and he was relegated to a smaller role. And quite frankly, he probably liked working with me and he liked the culture of the company. He didn't want to start looking for something new and figured he'd just collect a check and, you know, do some work, do some good transactions and deals and take a little break from management, but he just wasn't fully checked in. And so I said, listen, I love you. I would love to have you here on this team and work with you, but you got to perform. So why don't you take the weekend to think about this and let's reconnect on Monday and see what you want to do. And he came back to me on Monday and said, Josh, my wife and I chatted about this over the weekend. And first of all, I owe you an apology. As long as I am here, whether it's 6 months, a year, 5 years, whatever it is, I owe it to you to have my head in the game. And moving forward, you've got me 100%, my head's in the game. And so things turned around and he performed for about 4 to 6 weeks. And then we were back where we started. And again, it was just, we reached the point where he was just exhausted and burnt out. And as much as he wanted to do the right thing, he was just tired and couldn't bring himself to do it. So with that said, we figured out a path forward. We parted ways. He's still one of my closest friends. He was actually my co-founder in Session Guru, the other business. And again, we're still very close, but having that framework and those tools made it just really simple to have the conversation because it wasn't personal. We held everybody to the same standards in the organization. That was just business, how we did things. Luckily for him, you can, I wouldn't say luckily for us, but he ended up working at a competitor when he moved on and he became the number one salesperson in the whole firm. Did like 10 million in sales. It was just a better environment for him at that time, right? In terms of his role. So it was a win-win. But again, having that common framework and tools made it really simple to have the conversation, which was just a blessing. Definitely saved our friendship, then help our business move forward.
That's so excellent. Earlier, you mentioned an acronym, VTO, and for people who aren't familiar with traction, please tell us what a VTO is.
Yeah, so thank you for calling me out on that. I'll do my best to be very clear. With that said, VTO stands for Vision Traction Organizer. When Gino originally created EOS, and again, just to be really clear, Gino Wickman is the author of the book Traction. Traction was the initial book that described this operating system called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so the whole idea here is rather than reinventing the wheel and figure out basic brass tack stuff of how you run a business, there's a framework for this. How do you get everybody aligned on a vision? The VTO is the tool for that. How do you get everybody clear on the behaviors you expect of people, your culture, and their roles? How do you measure people by the numbers, right? These are things that apply to every business, regardless of what industry you're in. If you got people that you've got to manage, EOS can be a great tool for you. The Vision Traction Organizer is the tool that Gino created to help leaders align around a crystallized vision. And essentially through years of work through other EO run companies, because EOS did originate in EO Detroit is where Gino was a member. He started asking questions, right? What are the right questions to get your vision solidified? And he started with 100. That was too many. He narrowed it down to 7. That was too few and ended up on 8. So the idea of the VTO is it's a double-sided piece of paper you print out, which is your entire business plan. And you can use that to get everybody aligned around who we are as a culture. What do we expect the behaviors of people? Why we exist? What do we do? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And there's 8 sections. I think I kind of simplified that into 5, but nonetheless, that's the idea. And the idea is to first work with your leadership team to get everybody crystallized on what that vision is by answering those 8 questions. And then we've got to get that vision shared by all, meaning everybody in the organization is bought in. And that's the basics of getting everybody's energy moving in the same direction. In fact, from a metaphysical perspective, EOS is simply a system for managing human energy. Kalika, you and I are just balls of energy. We are atoms, right? It's amazing. We can literally direct that energy using our minds and our physical bodies to do amazing things. But to the degree that you can get everybody's energy moving in the same direction, it's just like adding batteries, right? If you are not getting everybody running in the same direction, it's like leakage of energy. You're just not realizing your full potential as an organization. You're butting heads. You're not working as a team. And the VTO is really just the foundation for conceptually getting everybody aligned.
I completely agree. What did Jim Lur say? Energy, not time, is the currency for high performance. Completely agree with you. Yeah. And so what I loved, in the very beginning, when we talked about the success of the companies that you've been having here in Los Angeles, you said that not everyone had the same vision. Some people wanted to grow, and what I love about that is this framework really is for everyone because like you said, not everyone wants to sell their company like you to a publicly traded IT firm, right? But they can use this framework to build, I guess, the life that they want. Is that what they mean by EOS life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Gino coined a term. Actually, it was Don Tinney, who was our integrator, Gino's original business partner, that coined this term, the EOS life. And there's an interesting story I'm just going to share with you real quickly around this. And Gino may have shared it in a previous podcast, but I'll share it anyhow, which is early on when Gino was packaging up EOS and realized he was onto something, he hired a marketing firm to go out and speak to clients about why was this so transformational to their business. So he had something he could sell and position it appropriately. And they kept coming back with some things that he just couldn't sell. he was hoping they come back with, on average, companies grow at 70% a year or something, with some data. And they kept coming back to five things. One was the people in these organizations were doing what they loved. They were working with people they loved. They were making a huge impact and difference in their community, their employees, their customers, because they were doing good work. They were all being compensated appropriately because the business was doing well. And lastly, because the business was being run so well, they had time to pursue other passions. It wasn't sucking up all their energy 24/7 because it was always a train wreck or a disaster or an emergency. And so we decided over years, Don Tinney came up with this idea of coining this term, the EOS life. And what we find is companies who are running on EOS at 80% or greater, we have a way of measuring how effectively you're using it so you can make course corrections. Those people in those organizations, by and far, are living the EOS life. It's a pretty good life. And so for some of my clients now, it's becoming really common to not only set some sort of growth target when they're growth oriented. We want to become 100 million in revenues by 2030 or whatever it is. They'll also say while living the EOS life. Because for the employees, it's not just about let's grow and be a leader. And obviously, when you grow, there's all sorts of career opportunities for employees to grow with you. And maybe there's some shared economic opportunities depending upon how you structure it. But it's also letting people know that it's not at the sake of creating a terrible culture. It's not at the sake of working people to death. We really want to create a great culture where all of our employees are living the EOS life, doing what they love with people they love, having time to pursue other passions, being compensated appropriately, and making a positive impact on the community.
Dr. Maria Nemeth has this definition of success is doing what you said you're going to do consistently with clarity, focus, ease, and grace. And it really describes what EOS is. Clarity, the vision, attraction organizer, focus, getting everyone focused. And then you just described this ease. Well, we all still have to work hard. There's something I think different between struggle and ease. I think struggle is when people are looking at other people doing what they want, having a successful business, being able to spend time with their family, and being on the outskirts, the outside of the arena, and just watching someone else do it. But then when you're in the arena yourself, in this culture where you love what you're doing, you love the people that you're with, and you're having a successful impact in the world, it's just so exciting.
It's exciting, and it becomes, in many ways, on a healthy team, it becomes effortless to get there. When you're working with people you dislike, you don't share the same values, you're frustrated with, you create all this extra energy, or you waste all this extra energy on trying to fix these problems and the back channel politics and complaining about people and this and that. Imagine taking all the energy and be able to harness it and just move forward in the same direction productively. You can grow exponentially that way versus, again, having all this leakage on the back end of energy. So yes, I love that.
I also find too that the entrepreneurs that do become successful are the ones who ask for help, because a lot of times entrepreneurs think that they shouldn't be asking for help, that they should know all the answers. Why is that concept flawed?
It's a great question. I think it goes back to a root lesson that I've learned, and this is through work I've done, readings of Patrick Lencioni and other stuff I've done, which really goes back to vulnerability. We are humans. We are flawed. We are not perfect, right? We connect through those flaws sometimes. In fact, sometimes that builds relationships even stronger. When I goof up on something and you say, Josh, there's a problem there, and I admit to it and we have a conversation about it, we connect at a human level because we know we're not all perfect. When leaders are stoic, they're perfect. They come in as these corporate polished things and their polished shoes and coming out of their car, and they never admit to any fault and everything's perfect. You can't connect to people that way. They just, quite frankly, call bullshit, right? We in our minds are just like that. That person's not authentic. They're not real. And so I think starting there just helps businesses grow more quickly because, again, we are being real. We're addressing the problems as they come up because we're admitting to them, et cetera. So when leaders think they know it all, I think they're holding themselves back. They don't. I don't know it all. Nobody knows it all from that perspective. And quite frankly, EOS has become really popular as a framework for companies to run their business. I have lost count. I think that we as EOS implementers have worked with something like 17,000 companies since EOS was really published, professionally working with them as coaches and facilitators and teachers to the leadership team to help them get what they want. With that said, not every company hires an EOS implementer. As you know through EO, and I do, I would say that if there's 17,000 companies we as implementers have worked with, there's probably a total of 170,000 that are using pieces of EOS. Oftentimes you'll hear somebody say, we run our business on Traction. That's an immediate sign to say you've probably self-implemented, because we don't call it Traction, we call it EOS. One of the books is called Traction. That was their first book. But that's great, and I'm not knocking it, because there's value in even just adopting something like the VTO, or just adopting the language of right person, right seat, or even just adopting the super effective weekly level 10 meeting for your leadership team to have productive meetings, which is, for the new folks, a really efficient way to run a meeting. But I find that those leaders who are willing to be vulnerable and ask for help get there much more effortlessly. And so there is power in being vulnerable. People oftentimes, I think, mistakenly see it as a weakness.
Yeah, they get to an average 44% increase in revenue.
Every one of my clients I work with, have become, either they were extremely vulnerable or they've become extremely vulnerable, and they see the power of that. But the reality of it is that we wouldn't be working together if they were not. When I speak with new prospective clients, I really let them know that you're going to have to do work here, and it's not going to be easy. It's like going to the gym. I can be your coach or your trainer and give you guidance, and as an outside party, see where you have opportunities to improve, see the mistakes, give them guidance and allow them to reflect on that, where maybe they didn't see it on their own, but I can't lift the weights for them. They've got to be willing to do the work. And part of being willing to do the work and accepting flaws and mistakes is being vulnerable.
Yeah. So you also helped me when I started a new digital agency, Orange and Bergamot. And I just wanted to just let you know that, having someone who's a serial entrepreneur who's sold multiple businesses, you have a real knack for teaching and coaching. Did you know that that was a natural gift? Does it excite you still today?
Well, thank you for the compliment, and thank you for believing in me early, because yes, you were one of my earliest clients at Orange and Bergamot. You allowed me to probably make some mistakes and test some things out. But nonetheless, I don't know. It's a really good question. First, thank you for the compliment. I don't know that I realized it early on, but definitely I recognized it at some point. It clicked. I am definitely in my unique ability. Dan Sullivan, as you know, strategic coach, coined that term, and that's really working in your sweet spot, what you were genetically encoded to do, or how, as we describe it, doing what you love, and it's what you're great at doing. And some of it has come really naturally to me. Some of it's required some work. But at the end of every day, after spending 8 hours facilitating a full day with a client, I remind myself and them of that. I feel like I'm doing them and myself a disservice. And I just let them know how grateful I am for our partnership, because I don't get to do this without them, without the partnership. They allow me to live in my unique ability every day. And I'm just so grateful I get to do that. But yeah, I don't know when it clicked, but at some point, when I think my business, EOS business, started to kind of hum, I wasn't certain at first. It's like starting any new business. I had a handful of clients at first. I'd say maybe in the first 5 months of being an EOS implementer, or 7 months, I had like 5 clients. And then I hit the new year flipped. It was January, and all the seeds I had planted over hundreds of conversations all of a sudden started to sprout, and my phone started ringing off the hook. Josh, we're ready to go. We're ready to go. And I just felt like a superstar. Like, this is going to work. That moment when you're starting a new business and you finally get that momentum. But it was probably shortly after that when I realized these clients were getting great value. I was getting great ratings for the days we were doing together, because we asked for some feedback at the end of the day. We were seeing a positive impact, that I realized, man, I think I just found my unique ability. So I'm grateful for that every single day.
Yeah, and then you have a beautiful office that you built for Traction. Tell us a little bit about why you built that office in downtown LA. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's where I am here today. I'm actually in kind of a smaller space here. This is I was very involved in very competitive triathlons for a while. So I figured I got to store it somewhere. It creates a conversation piece on the wall. But in any event, I am here at our office. As you know, the book is called Traction. And there is one small street in Los Angeles of millions of people that is literally probably like a quarter mile long that happens to be called Traction Avenue. I know, exactly. I lived here my entire life. Didn't know it even existed until I stumbled upon it because the client had their offices here. And so we are located at 811 Traction Avenue. It's in the Arts District in Los Angeles. For those of you who aren't local here, the Arts District was one of the earlier parts of the city. The building we're in is about 105 years old or something along those lines, all brick walls. And it was a manufacturing and distribution area in LA nearest the train track that when the trains first came into LA. So people could get their goods in and out and have an advantage for distribution and construction, manufacturing. So it went through a period of not so great periods of time where it sort of fell into disarray and it became a low income place for artists to come and a thriving art community. It's definitely gentrified in more recent years, and there's amazing food and beverage. We're right up the street from Dodger Stadium. My son and I are going to the parade afterwards. They just won the World Series last night, which is awesome. We're not too far from Crypto, the former Staples Center. And so my thought was there's no great place in Los Angeles. If you know Los Angeles, it's just freeways all over the place. There's no real city center. This location is equally inconvenient for everybody. I wanted to build a urban retreat facility where people would want to come, have an amazing day where they could do their best work to do their planning for the quarter or learn something new, be taken care of. So we have a whole hospitality kind of experience here where we personalize the experience to everybody's preferences. So if you love Diet Coke, we've always got Diet Coke in the fridge. If you love frozen grapes, we've got frozen grapes out at the table. If you love Taylor Swift, we've got Taylor Swift playing on the breaks, whatever it might be. But it really just creates a canvas where people can do their best work. And because it's in this location where it's equally inconvenient for everybody, meaning there is no great place in LA, and there's just amazing food and beverage, et cetera. It creates an opportunity for leadership teams to get together after a day together to go do something fun, wait out traffic, have a great meal, and bond. And it's been a true pleasure for me too, because I'm inspired every day that I come here. And I've got a great team here. Something I learned from Strategic Coach is this saying that Dan Sullivan did two things. I'm sorry. Geez, Dan Sullivan is a creative strategic coach. I mean, Frank Sinatra did two things. Frank Sinatra sang and he prepared to sing. Frank Sinatra did not tune his own pianos. And so the idea is I'm able to come here, drive up 10 minutes before, 15 minutes before I start the day with a client. Everything's taken care of. I can show up on stage, work with clients, do our best work, manage your energy, spend 10, 15 minutes at the end of the day with my team debriefing and head home and not have to worry about anything else in the business. And that enables me to be the best I can be for my clients and keep my energy up and delegate everything else to the rest of the team. And so it's been a true pleasure to have the facility here, and the clients love it as well.
Yeah, we should add some B-roll. So you got to give me some video. So, on YouTube, we'll add some.
More than happy to. Yeah, I've got a ton of it. So if you let me know. Also, if you look at my YouTube channel, there's a ton of testimonial videos from clients where there's B-roll there of me working with clients. Feel free to snag any of that if that's helpful too.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that because besides your branding, your video marketing is excellent. Tell us
Thank you.
a bit about why you chose video to help market your business.
Yeah, so I'm very much of a grassroots marketer. I am, as you know, I don't post on social very often. For me, it's really about relationships. And given the fact that I'm based here in LA and my real target market are LA run companies, it's really about just relationships. 90% of my clients come through referrals. With that said, I really wanted to be able to showcase the work of our clients and the impact it's had on their business and really just tell stories. And the idea came to me about creating really high profile or high quality, I should say, videos where clients can tell their stories of why did they choose EOS? There was a reason they felt stuck or something wasn't working. Showcase their business a little bit, share how EOS has impacted their business and really what's been the benefit of working with an EOS implementer, because they could have chose to implement it on their own, read the book and do some of the work on their own. And so just found a great crew of people to do this. And it's just been such a pleasure to showcase the success we've had with our clients and have them tell their stories. And I get to share that with the rest of the world. It helps to promote EOS. Obviously, it puts me at the center of it a little bit in terms of these particular stories, but they're not the only stories out there. But for me, it wasn't something where it was really a marketing strategy to generate warm leads. It was really about telling stories. I figured even if I put a dozen videos out there, I'm not going to sit here and spend dollars driving traffic to these things. It's really just about putting the content out there. And I think more often what happens is people will either stumble across them, or I'll share them with all of my clients, or a prospective client meets me and says, I'm really not sure this is right for me. And it's not me telling the story. It's much more compelling when a company who's received all the benefit and the impact is telling the story, another entrepreneur. And I think it just becomes really convincing. And quite frankly, it's just been such a delight to be able to celebrate the success by documenting these stories.
Yeah, it's like you're a proud papa.
That's 100%. In fact, I've now, which has been the biggest reward to me of all, had 6 people that are either clients or colleagues of mine over the last several years that have used EOS in their businesses, either because I was their coach or they learned about it through me in some way or another, implemented it, either sold their businesses successfully, or their businesses are running so well now they don't have to be there every day. They've really moved into the owner's box. They become EOS implementers. So that's like the ultimate compliment where
Is one of them Michael Richmond?
one of them is Michael Richmond. He was my first EO mentee. I offered myself, as I still do every year, as a mentor to an EO member in EOLA, and Michael was my first mentee. And so he didn't officially work with me as an implementer, but as a mentee, I taught him a little bit about EOS and talked through the book, and he implemented his business and sold it. And he became an EOS implementer with me, and he's like family. We actually shared a practice manager for about a year and a half while he got up and running, till both of our practices got too large and he needed his own person. So
And he's now going to be in, he's president-elect for LA. So
that's
he's
right.
got the time to
That's exactly,
do this and give back
that's
because
exactly
he's
right.
also received, right?
Yeah, and in fact, I think Eric Costablanco, who's been a long-term client of mine as well, is becoming the EOLA Valley president next year as well. Again, his business is running well enough where he's able to give back the time. I believe another one of my clients has become an implementer. I think maybe president-elect for the Valley chapter. I don't want to quote that, but that's my understanding. So yes, it's been a lot of fun. In fact, when we started working together, you were just becoming president of LA at the time.
Yeah, that's right. We've known each other for so many years. There's also so many talents that you have. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we're just not entrepreneurs. You're a triathlete. You're also an amazing baker, right? Where do you like making sourdough bread for,
I've
right?
gone through periods of loving to make food and cocktails.
And you're a musician.
I am. Yeah. So you were at my 40th. I'm 47 now. Believe it or not, that was 7 years ago, which is insane. But my wife and I were on a beach. We were in Bora Bora on our 39th birthday. We're both the same age, and said, "What do we want to do for our 40th?" And it just clicked for me. I said, "I want to be a rock star for the night." I had grown up wanting to be a rock star. I played guitar, I played drums, and ultimately just realized the practical side of me said, "Okay, it's highly unlikely I'm going to strike it rich as a rock star and have the life I want to live, so I can still play music as a hobby." And really stopped, quite frankly, when we had kids in our 30s and or in my 20s when I was building my business. In my 30s, I bought an acoustic guitar just to play for the kids a little bit. And when I turned 40, I said, okay, now's my chance to be a rock star for the night. And so we rented out a venue, hired a backup band. I started playing again for about a year and played a handful of songs. We had our friends do live band karaoke when I wasn't playing, so they got to all perform. And just recently, I took up playing bass guitar as sort of a passion. So I think for my 50th, we may do something similar. Stay tuned.
Is your rabbi going to perform again?
Oh, that was amazing. I don't know. We'll see. Yes, the best part is that one of the songs I choose to play, I hope I can use somewhat of a profanity on this, is a Prince song called Sexy Motherfucker or Sexy MF. One of my favorite songs. Check it out if you haven't heard of it. And at the time, my rabbi, who's very progressive, is an amazing rapper. And there's this one section of the song where there's rap. So I said, Joel, would you come up and do the rap on this? And not only did
Brilliant.
he, but he surprised me. He created a custom rap celebrating me about, like, it wasn't even on the album. He surprised me. I was just overwhelmed with joy, which was really awesome. So that was really fun.
Yeah, it's just so wonderful to see an entrepreneur that's thriving because just like all of us in this EO world or entrepreneur journey, it's tough, but there is light at the end of the tunnel for everyone who's listening. it doesn't have to be exhausting. It doesn't have to be draining. It can really lift you up because you're doing what you love to do. And so if people want to learn more about you, I know that you've got a full practice. I mean, would you like to connect it with other potential clients?
I love meeting entrepreneurs. I particularly love meeting EO members because that is so near and dear to my heart. You could make an argument I would not be here today if it wasn't for EO. In fact, I think you can definitely say I would not be here today if it wasn't for EO. If you think of all the through lines, I was the first class of accelerator. EO was a critical part of my journey. EOS was derived from EO Detroit. If EO didn't exist, I don't know that I would be here today in this capacity. So my practice goes up and down where I'm full and I'm at capacity to all of a sudden I've got an opening, right? There's always kind of rolling people coming in and out over time. And so regardless of whether I'm full or not, I always love to hear from other EO members because whether they just want some guidance and advice outside of EOS, I love entrepreneurs. Or if they are looking to learn more about EOS, either I may be the right fit, or if I don't, or if I'm not the right fit, there are again hundreds of other peers of mine that I know relatively well that I can connect you with. But if you'd like to learn more, best place is really just to go to my microsite, which is eosworldwide.com/Josh-Holtzman. That's the easiest way to find me. If you Google me, you'll find Josh Holtzman, EOS implementer. There's, you'll come across my videos on YouTube. You'll come across my landing page, the LA Business Journal article, whatever it might be. And alternatively via email, if it's okay to give my email address out, happy to do so. Josh.Holtzman@eosworldwide.com.
You have been such a pleasure to talk to you. I've learned so much from you over the past years, and I'm just so excited to see what's next. So, maybe next time we bump into each other at the Palisades, you'll be on the cover of the New York Times. Who knows? Or the LA
Who
Times,
knows?
Who
Exactly. We'll see.
knows, right? And then we'll have
Exactly.
to have you back on the podcast again.
Would love to be here. Anything I can do for you in the podcast, it is always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been so inspiring. So everyone, please look up Josh Holtzman, Josh Holtzman LA, and everything will come up, and we'll have everything in the show notes. It was such a pleasure talking to you, Josh. Have an
Thanks,
awesome day.
Malika.